Hello everyone, this is Mark Semedini from Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and I'm here with Dave Rednikoff, and we are going to cover a little bit about a new application that's on ClearCenter.com or on the ClearOS marketplace. It's called the Gateway Management application. And what we're going to do is we're going to cover what it is, we're going to talk about why it's essential, where do you find it, how do you deploy it, and where you can get more information about it. So without further ado, Dave, turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Mark. I appreciate it. We're very excited to offer this in the ClearOS marketplace as an application that really is installed very, very easily. Once you've gone through the marketplace and installed it, it's as simple as going through the gateway, filtering in the user interface, and you'll see Gateway Management Business or Community Edition, whichever one you happen to install. And what you'll see here is really not a tremendous amount of detail other than a box ID which identifies this particular location and whether or not it's enabled and what you've chosen as a block page IP address. For the most part, 99% of the cases, whatever it chooses for you by default is fine, but if you need to change it, you can do that here. And from the ClearOS UI perspective, that's all you need to do at this point in the game. So if you then choose to log into the dashboard, that'll take you to the dashboard where I've already logged in here. And if you have not seen this before, you'll notice immediately that it's a UI that automatically allows you to be multi-account as well as on a per account multi-location. And since we're here at Discover 2017, we have three booths. We have them each set up as a separate location.
As we're looking at the setup for those locations, tell me a little bit more. What is Gateway Management? What is it about?
Right. So Gateway Management is really designed to be an extremely efficient way of doing filtering at the gateway level. And it has a special focus on egress control because it turns out that most threats and malicious content is best filtered when you are at the beginning of the kill chain. So why wait until something has gotten into the network to then decide if you want to filter it out? Why not prevent the request for that content to come in? That's how we get on early on in the kill chain. And we do that by using two key mechanisms that's available in the underlying operating system. We do that by having a separate DNS resolver, and we also do it by having an intimate connection with the firewall rules. So firewall rules really change dynamically, sometimes 100 times a second, but in a very efficient manner so that the filtering can be done without the use of any proxy. So it's a DNS and firewall based filter that does not use proxy, and it's one of the ways that you can actually have the internet speed and app speed experience improve for the end user when the filtering is enabled, when traditionally filtering had the opposite impact. It slowed you down. And so users and small business owners would say, get that out of here, because it was just impeding their work. Well, now not only do you have the safety and security of filtering, but at the same time you get a dramatic performance improvement.
So I've heard the terms thrown around, egress and whitelisting. You know, what do we really mean when we talk about that stuff?
Right. So when we approach the filtering and we notice that there's a lot of technology that we've seen in the past and used in the past that was about blocking it once it came onto the network, and we started to look at what if we designed something from the ground up that was very efficient at do this, we realized that you really should be looking at blocking it at the request level. So when your smartphone, when your IoT device, when your desktop or server makes that first request to contact a server in the cloud and bring stuff down, that's the point at which it needs to be stopped, and it needs to do so efficiently. And so that's why you hear us use the term egress a lot, because of needing to be at the beginning of the kill chain for a potentially unwanted or malicious request. And so that begs, really, it's about applying a new ideology, when traditionally we had this ideology of, the internet is this awesome, fantastic thing, and we can access anything that we want. And so then when bad stuff started appearing, we took this ideology of, oh, let's just block the stuff that's bad. But over time, in 2017, we're at the point where there's 1 billion domains, there's more than 1 million new threats a day. We don't actually have the luxury anymore to believe that we are sufficiently good to block off the bad. So then we have to rethink about how to access it and say, let's start over with how do we just start with nothing and then add what we need. So when we talk about whitelisting, we're literally talking about having a starting ground of 0 and then adding what we actually need.
This is really great because security is a major topic out there in the industry today, and HP is a hardware vendor. We've really never played in the security arena, and I guess what you're talking about here really gives HP an opportunity to sell its servers, general purpose servers, as specific security devices.
That's exactly right. And since ClearOS is now available on all Gen 9 servers, this is a great opportunity to deploy this literally on any HP server. So we're very excited about that.
Awesome, thank you. So tell me a little bit about what's essential in this application and what kinds of paradigms is it allowing as we move forward?
Sure. So when we think about filtering the internet, we think of it from a number of different perspectives. One of the perspectives that's most common is easily understood when we are getting so much by way of ransomware and bad and malware that comes very often via malvertising. These are third-party ad networks that unknowingly are accepting a customer of theirs to post an ad that's malicious because it takes advantage of a font rendering weakness inside of your version of Windows or whatever. So we think of it first and most easily from an end user perspective. How do we protect the end user from accessing accidental content that they weren't intended? This also is very relevant when you think about how modern threats all evolve to be multi-stage now. So the first stage always some kind of a dropper on the local LAN segment that takes advantage of some kind of a weakness, and then the subsequent stages for that computer then to make an outbound call. So that's the beginning of the kill chain again that we want to be at from an end user's protection point of view. The second main purpose is IoT devices should not need to be able to do anything except phone home to their controller. If your IoT has a firmware weakness that might take weeks, months, or years to be patched, you want to make sure that if it is compromised, that it is now contained, it cannot do anything malicious on towards others, and most definitely not participate on internet-bound denial of service attacks, for example. And then there's a third one, and which is just as important when we read all the news about all the data that has been leaked from organizations. And it took, in the case of the well-publicized Sony hack, that took place over years. There's no reason why that kind of stuff needs to happen when you have proper, tight controls on what a server can do on an outbound connection. So we have special policies or rule sets, as we call them, to say, for example, the server should be able to go and grab its Windows updates. It should be able to do its online backups in the cloud. It should be able to access its own application updates for its own endpoint security protection and so forth. But not beyond that. If it does end up with a dropper of some kind, it should just simply not be allowed to do anything else whatsoever. So those are the three purposes: workstations, endpoint protection for IoT devices, as well as servers.
Awesome. So you've got us excited here about what this application can do inside the ClearOS marketplace. You showed us where it's at. Now we're going to take a look at what it can do. Run us through a scenario here.
Okay, so typically what you would do is if you were on a desktop that was, say, on a whitelist rule set, you might go and visit a news site. So, Mark, where do you grab your news from back home? Give me a website that you like to go to.
Well, I usually go to Yahoo News. That's where I start, and then I kind of go to Google after that.
So I've already got that. Are you from Houston?
Yes.
Houston Chronicle. How about we check out Houston Chronicle and see if we can take a look at what we can find on Houston Chronicle. So we haven't been there before, And so we end up being presented with a block page. Now, as an end user, I'll just now click on Request Unblock because naturally I want to go there. But this is actually turns out to be really, really important what happens here, because it's now a user saying, yes, I do want to go there. It's one way to verify that it's not a machine or it's not a rogue application that's trying to go to this website. So this is the start of building your own whitelist entirely. And so if you take a look at your content filter domain log, this is, by the way, accessible for you as an admin. You can even make it accessible to your end users if you like, for those that are interested. But let me just quickly show you what happened behind the scenes in the unblock request window. So we've been doing some demos here, and we have cron.com right here that is currently being processed for an assessment. This process here only goes through the first time it's being requested on your network, and every subsequent user, once it's approved, will have access to that. If we go over to the Close tab, because it's already processed by now, it only takes a few short moments, you'll notice that cron.com was approved, it's safe and accepted. And if we click on View, what's interesting is that we get quite a list of domains that are dependencies as we crawled it. And many of those are ad-based domains, and so those and trackers, those we're not going to allow through. So the end user really doesn't need to do much else except wait or allow the website to refresh or refresh it themselves. And next thing you know, the website loads fine. The next person that loads it will not end up having to request an unblock, provided that you created a rule set that's consistent in that office, maybe in that region. We have sites that have hundreds of sites that are sharing in the same whitelist. So when one of those 100 sites makes a request and it's automatically approved, it's now automatically part of the whitelist of every site.
So that's using machine learning to take care of approving sites.
That's correct.
And I guess what the benefit of that is that you don't have to approve like 1,000 different sites. So once you get one, you can accept a few others that are safe.
That's exactly right. And you're building your whitelist as you go without needing to worry about the million threats a day that are out there, because every single threat out there is bad. And what it turns out to be that if you narrow it down over a period of a month, the average individual visits less than 3,000 domains in an entire month. So think about the numbers. You have 1 billion that you need to figure out what's bad, or find the 3,000 that are good that you need access to. And it turns out that this is the safer way to do it.
Well, and the other thing that I like is if I look at the page here now, I'm not seeing all those annoying ads that are trying to sell me or point me to places I don't want to go.
That's right. Not only the ad, but the hidden trackers that you otherwise would have. By scrolling, you get tracked and so forth. And very often websites have what we call web spam. They have content enhancements where they're actually bringing in content from other sites that's promoted content. And very often, I mean, those that are concerned about the real estate, about the bandwidth, it turns out that most websites will load between 30 to 50% faster. Universities have done studies. When you block third-party ad networks, you're saving up to 40% of bandwidth. I mean, there's all kinds of wins for the end user, and the only momentary pause is when they're educated and are notified that the first time you visit a website, you're going to have to just confirm that you actually do want to go there, and they understand the benefit of that, meaning that any rogue application or something that operates behind the scenes cannot do so, then they are completely understanding. We're finding the users very, very comfortable with this. It even gives everyone on the team better peace of mind.
So we've talked a little bit about WannaCry and some of the exploits that have happened out here recently. What does gateway management do to block things like WannaCry?
That's a very good question. So when you access a domain that maybe not even registered at all, you know, we could just do anything at all, whatever it might be. We always respond. I meant to do that with an actual URL so that Google doesn't translate it. We always respond in this way, even if it's not a valid domain. And it turns out that this is what a lot of, and you see that it was blocked here, right? But it turns out that this is what the bad actors use to determine if you are a security researcher. And so we simply behave like a security researcher everywhere, because security researchers will hijack all DNS for any domain, and therefore we ended up having a kill switch built into the solution for WannaCry. Now, it doesn't mean that every ransomware will have the same behavior, but in the case of WannaCry, absolutely nobody was infected that was using our services because it acted like the kill switch was active.
So essentially what I get with gateway management is I get a content filtration application that not only allows me to determine the sites that are good, so I'm not even approaching the sites that are bad, but I get to cut out all the adware and the tracking stuff, and then I can eliminate exploits that are trying to point me to sites that I don't want to go to that may result in bad situations.
Yep, that's exactly right. And if you were to try to do an unblock request here of a site that is not approved, you can see that what happens when adult content, for example, is attempted to be unblocked, that is rejected based on it being adult content. So the completely safe thing to do is to request an unblock anytime you want, because the machine learning will only make a pass if it passes muster with our entire checking algorithm and machine learning altogether. That includes Google Safe Browsing. That includes whether or not the website has a positive reputation. The absence of a reputation is not good enough. It has to have an existing positive reputation for it to pass muster. Otherwise, it'll either be rejected when it's known to be malicious, or it'll stay in the queue for you to manually process, like we have here, for example, one that our assessment wasn't able to address. So it's waiting for the administrator then to take action and either reject or approve it.
I got it. Great. That's awesome. So is there anything else that we should know about gateway management that would be helpful for the folks there at HPE?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that is very, very commonly requested, and what environments, including academia, we have university, college campuses that use it for the safe search engines, that use it for the YouTube safety mode. One of the things about YouTube safety mode is that it automatically blocks comments, because comments is typically where most objectionable content even lives. And so then there's two levels of filtering, moderate and strict, and you can choose one or the other. There's a number of different ways to approach it. You can approach it with a blacklist as well. Approaching a filtering service with a blacklist means that you are taking the traditional ideology of allow all, block some. But remember that even with all these managed blacklists, in addition to ones that you manage yourself, will still not guarantee that there isn't bad content out there that is allowed through. But it still gives them the immediate benefit of having the ads, the known trackers, the known malicious content, the known adult content blocked. But there's stages, and this is a huge opportunity from a consulting perspective to find out what is the client's desire, what is their sensitivity to security. Are they deriving better peace of mind by being 100% secure? Then you put them on a whitelist. Do they want something that's immediate, quick? Then you can put them on a blacklist and even turn on something that we call learning mode for a period of 90 days, and you can build a starter whitelist by just using learning mode as well.
Now, is there anything else that people should know about the setup of this? I mean, you install it. Are there any other things that they need to do to get it up and running? Like design it this way, or accept this, or reject that?
There certainly are ways. So it's built to be completely customizable. When you see that we have the auto whitelist rule set, think of it as like a policy. This is what it looks like. When we have devices that are treated by this auto whitelist only rule set, this is how they're being treated. They do have access to Google and Bing via the forced safe search mode. They do have their YouTube filtered with a moderate filtering that blocks out comments. And then they have access to Amazon. And because of things like Apple, the way Apple works with iMessages and how you access the App Store and Siri and how you do macOS updates, we've enabled those as well. These are special, what we call subscriptions. And there's other services here that operate like that, where if you have specific services like Vimeo and YouTube, you want to turn them on because they have a long list of dependencies. So rather than you clicking on unblock request on YouTube and then finding out several layers deep, oh, there's another content delivery network type domain that wasn't included, those special kind of services are included here. And so the way it works is with this notion of what we call subscriptions. And so once you find out what the client's needs are, then you simply add the subscriptions. This works both in a small environment as well as in a very large distributed environment. Because anything you do on a per location basis is automatically available on all the other locations as well. So when you create a list, when you create a subscription, those are now available to each one of our demo booths here, each one of the locations. These could be, Houston, LA, and New York, and they're all available with the same setting. So it's very much designed to be something that you do once, and then you have availability of that across the entire distributed enterprise.
Who do you see as being the most prominent customer opportunity or market for this type of an application?
The larger the organization is, the more distributed it is, the more they get the economies of scale. So our largest client is a Fortune 50 retailer with hundreds of locations that uses this as a whitelisting tool. And then when one of the stores needs access to a new resource and it's approved centrally, by the way, then it means that every store gets immediate benefit out of that. When there's a new device added to the network, there's absolutely nothing to do because of the way default rule sets work. So in this case, we have a default rule set at our booth of the block the bad. If we were to choose the auto whitelist as the default rule set, it means that as soon as a device joins the network, it is automatically treated from that day on using auto whitelist only mode. And by default, this is identity-based filtering, which means that it follows as long as we have layer 2 visibility. In other words, as long as the gateway can see the MAC address of your device, it will follow it throughout the enterprise. And that is the way most networks are architected and designed these days, is that the edge has the MAC address visibility, and so then it's followed. And if additional identity details need to be changed, we can make it customized. We can customize it via Active Directory or LDAP so that based on the user login, changes can be effective immediately.
Awesome. So where would the folks there at HPE, the partners, where would they go for more information on this?
For more information, head over to gateway.management. There are the variety of different plans available, and there's value in each one of these plans, but the feature set is different. And when you get to the enterprise class, then of course you get into features such as high availability. We didn't cover off a great deal on the don't talk to strangers, but I'm not sure if you still want to cover that off briefly.
Yeah, let's go through that just really briefly here.
So Don't Talk to Strangers is a feature that's available in business as well as in the enterprise plan. And what Don't Talk to Strangers is effectively does is it disallows any traffic that didn't originate with a DNS query. In other words, it makes DNS level filtering, which is what we're doing here, 100% leak proof on premises. And this is different from anyone who might try to do this kind of filtering and IP enforcement in the cloud. This is on-premise, and so it's fast, it's super efficient, and there's provisions for this. For example, if you have a device that doesn't even use DNS and it contacts some foreign country's IP address where the command and control server runs, you'll get an alert because as the sys administrator, you would want to be alerted that the attempt was made, but the malicious content was blocked. In fact, what will very often happen is you end up getting the attempt blocked, but since it may be a brand new command and control server that no one has ever inventoried yet, until 2 weeks later it becomes a big news story about how some new ransomware was started with a botnet that had a command control server here, we are now able to retroactively notify and find out every single site where that dropper had existed at some point. And so it's really a game changer. Instead of being reactive, we can now actually be proactive and then in hindsight identify what it was that we blocked it from. This solves the managed service provider's typical problem. When you have a well-managed network, your customer will say to you, well, the CFO might say, what am I paying all this monthly money for? Right? What have you done for me lately is what we call that problem. This is a huge contributor to now allowing you to go back to the customer and say, look at all the threats that I blocked for you just in the last 2 weeks. We didn't know what they were. Now we know, but you were protected. That kind of peace of mind comes as a result of Don't Talk to Strangers.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, Dave. I really appreciate you walking us through the gateway management application. So today we covered what it is and why it's essential, where you find it, how do you deploy it, some of the use cases for using it. Hopefully it's been valuable. Please tune in again for another screencast on covering ClearOS marketplace applications. We appreciate you listening.